right. Well, hello everybody to a bonus episode. I'm excited to do these for this series. Most of the bonus episodes are going to cover sort of the people in between our main videos. So we just did our video on Adam and Eve. We have a list of people between them and Noah. There's not a lot that is about those people, so we don't have like a study for those people. But I wanted to kind of cover bridge that gap from Adam to Noah. That's what this video would tackle. And then if during one of our other videos we have a topic that comes up that I need to spend a bit more time thinking and studying on, we could do bonus videos on those as well. So the passages that we're going to be looking at today actually is just Genesis 5. That covers from the genealogy from Adam to Noah. That's actually what it'll be titled in most of your Bibles. And it's going to start off back with Adam and then go on from there. This is one of those areas where us as modern readers get a little bit confused because it kind of jumps around. This comes just after it talks about Cain's line, and so it actually jumps forward in time and goes all the way up to this guy named Lamech, who was really bad. It kind of portrays him as like way worse than Cain was, so it's kind of portraying that mankind is going down the wrong path yet again. And then it kind of jumps back and says, okay, let's go back and start with Adam and go down Seth's line. So when you read the Bible, that can kind of be disjarring, but as you steep yourself in it longer and longer, you actually start to, excuse me, kind of be able to sit with those sorts of situations and actually start to compare passage 4 and 5, where it's the lineage of Cain and then the lineage of Seth. Um, and there's actually a lot that you can compare. We won't get in too much detail, but you'll notice that some of the names are similar or the same within those two. And I think that there is something there. It's not that they've merged. I think they're trying to show some contrast in that. But those are some things that you might notice as you go ahead and read. So we talked about Adam and Eve. So it kind of has the same pattern for each person as you go on. When Adam had lived 130 years, he had his own son. He named him Seth. And then after Seth was born, he lived another 800 years. So it kind of does this. They lived this long, then they had their kid, and only kind of gives their firstborn son. And then how long they lived afterwards, their total amount of years. And so this is where you can start to get out your pencil and paper and you can start to do your math about, okay, by the time Noah and the flood comes along, how long has that been since creation? I've got a chart that I found that was really nice. I'll show you guys that. So that way you can kind of understand the timeline if you're going with the literal approach to the years. And I think if you're a Christian, you can go the literal or in kind of figurative. I don't think it matters that much. As long as you are okay with, yeah, if God created this lineage of people to live longer, he has that power. And I don't have to believe that that happened. I could maybe say that the numbers mean something. I don't know what it is yet, but I need to at least admit God has that ability to do it. Um, and so I don't really care which way for that particular debate, whether they are literal years or not. One point of interest, there are similar sort of origin stories in other cultures where they kind of have these lineage of kings is more like it. So all this is just a lineage of normal people. Um, Other cultures had like these were our great kings, and they had them living like into 20s of thousands of years. So like these all being under 1,000 was very tame at that time compared to these other stories. And so it may be some sort of comment on that, or this was written first and people copied it and exaggerated their numbers. I don't know. Maybe with some more scholarship and archaeology, we'll find out more. All right, so we've already talked about Adam. He lives a pretty nice long life, 930 years, and we go down the line of Seth. So when Seth had lived 105 years, he became the father of Enosh, and then he lived 807. Not much that we get on Seth other than you can go back and read a little bit more about him. Just when Eve conceives and gives birth to Seth, she actually has a better heart towards that situation when she had Cain, she was like, I've made a man. But then all that event happens with Cain and Abel. They have Seth, and she says, God has blessed me with Seth. So you can kind of see some growth on Eve there. Um, but the kind of storyline that we got when we were talking about Adam and Eve, if you remember, there was that kind of prophecy about the seed of Adam and Eve is going to crush the snake. And so when you are introduced to Cain and Abel, you're like, oh, okay, one of these is going to crush the snake. That's the seed of Eve. And then instead of crushing the snake, sorry, let me get rid of that ad. One of the brothers gives in to the snake, becomes the snake, and kills his own brother. And so then you maybe are hopeful, okay, well, they had Seth. Now is he going to crush the Seth? And it just kind of skips on pie. So it's like, okay, this is an immediate thing. This will be, now we're looking forward as we read the Bible. When will we find this son of Eve, the seed of Eve, who's going to take on the snake? And what's interesting about this list, it's a list of 10 people. That's an important number. 10 people, 10 is like a completion number. And when we get to the seventh person in that list, so start with Adam, seventh person down, there's something unique about that seventh person. So, okay, so none of these people are going to be the person that actually crushes the snake, but that's kind of as you read the Bible, each character is we're kind of like, ooh, is this the person? I think I didn't dig into it, but I think that, and we'll get to this when we get to Enoch. I think that there was we call them apocryphal books. They're kind of extra writings that were kind of around either at the time of Jesus or sometime shortly thereafter that were written. And what you'll find is a way people used to write back then is instead of saying, I, Jared, am the author of this little work, is they would impersonate sort of a character from the Bible and write as if they were that person, not trying to trick people. Like people didn't like go, oh, that wasn't you. Like they're using that person as like a platform to share some theology. The main one that I think most people have heard of is the Book of Enoch, and we'll get to Enoch in a bit. But I think I saw that there was a Book of Seth. So somebody had written something as if they were Seth. Um, I haven't dug into what that is even about, um, but that'll come back up when we talk about Enoch. So Seth lived for 912 years, fathered Enosh. Enosh, father of Canaan. Let's just jump over to our graphic so that we can kind of see all the names. And they got this in a nice little timeline so you can see Adam lived all this time. And they like to point out in this that if you look at who was alive when Adam was alive, all the people up to Lamech, who was Noah's dad, were alive while Adam was still alive, which is kind of cool. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Our seventh person is Enoch. He gets taken up. Let's actually look at that verse. Jared, this guy's a bomb. Love this guy. When Enoch had lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah, also an interesting character. After he became the father of Methuselah, Enoch walked faithfully with God 300 years and had other sons and daughters. Altogether, Enoch lived a total of 365 years. Enoch walked faithfully with God. Then he was no more because God took him away. So that has been the source of lots of theories and what's going on here. So I mentioned sometimes we get these books written as if it was from the perspective of that person, or their. So there's the Book of Enoch, and this was written. This was a book that was around during the time of Jesus. I think it was written between the 200 to 0 BC era, and so us Protestant Christians or evangelical, this would be an apocryphal book. We don't include it in our Bible. Some denominations of the larger Christianity umbrella do include the Book of Enoch. I want to say Catholics include it or Orthodox do. Um, Now, when we're looking at those sorts of books and down the line, I don't think this is super important for Christians to focus on these too much. But down the line, I'd like to review some of these, kind of see what they're about. And the Book of Enoch is probably where I'll start, because actually, in the Book of Jude, um, Jude references content from the book of Enoch. So, and Jude was Jesus's half brother. So he was at least read in it. Now, they didn't consider it a Bible at the time. And just because he references it doesn't mean that it needs to be a part of the Bible. But it makes me interested that he saw value in reading it, or at least it was in their time. They read it. And so I think we can kind of open our door towards, well, what's this about? And what do we take from it? Someday we'll get to that. So we had Jared, Enoch, Methuselah. He's famous for living the longest, a total of 969 years. And what I like about this graphic is that helps you point out that Methuselah lived right up to the flood. And so Lamech died shortly before by a few years. Methuselah lived until the flood. So he did not make it through the flood. And then the Bible doesn't like have anything written about that, but the numbers work out. So that's the case. So very cool about that. Methuselah then had Lamech, and then Lamech had Noah. And we'll talk more about Noah in our next video. I will link to this graphic. I'll actually find the original website just so give them credit for this very cool graphic, if it indeed was from them. But that'll let you, so you don't have to do all the math. You can kind of see, I believe the year was 1656 that they came to for the year of the flood from Adam to then. So use that number if you want. Don't use that number if you want. That's there for you. Now, there's one other thing that I have learned or heard about when it comes to this genealogy, and that is if you take what the names of these people mean, that you could consider it a hidden message or some sort of prophecy. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. How much stock should we put in it, and what does that mean? So let's jump over. I got another graphic here that slightly blurry, but will help us kind of see what this is about. I've heard credible people point this out, and I've read on some blogs people kind of poo-shooing it. So in black would be an appropriate translation for what the person's name means. So Adam literally just means man or mankind. And the only other one that I know off my top of my head is Noah. Noah means rest, and that one is actually explicit in probably in Genesis 6. Lamech calls him Noah because he would give them rest. Here we go. He will comfort us in labor. So yeah, he named him Noah because he would give them rest. So sometimes they'll tell you what it means, but oftentimes we're kind of left to interpreting how their Hebrew names, the roots of them. I don't think many people argue about the meanings of these names, so people aren't saying they don't mean this. They may argue that maybe teaching would be how you could translate it, but that's like the tense of it. To teach, taught, teaching, like what tense I think is vague. So what people do is translate in a way that makes a sentence. So we'll read this out, and this is what people are saying it means. Man is appointed mortal sorrow, but the blessed God shall come down, teaching that his death shall bring the despairing rest. So I think people break it up into a few groups. So man is appointed mortal sorrow. So that would be like the fall and so the curse. But so the next section, the blessed God shall come down teaching. This would be like the law of Moses coming down to teach, or you could go more specific and say this is Jesus coming and teaching. And then his death shall bring the despairing rest. And you're like, well, that's definitely Jesus. So what do we do with this information? And there's kind of two ways to interpret it. One, did the Holy Spirit work to make sure during this timeline that their names got named this way so that the meanings of their names would somehow prophesy to some generations that this was coming, or that we could look back at it thousands of years later and see that. That is one possibility, that the Holy Spirit worked that way to have those names like that. The other would be that we don't really actually know, like, these people existed, but like what their names were is kind of lost to history. And so whoever put this list of people together, possibly Moses or Joshua, chose names in a way and organized it to have this meaning. And they're not saying that these people didn't exist and there wasn't some genealogy from the first man to Noah, but just that we don't really know who their names are, what their literal names were, but we'll give them names and have a secret kind of message in there. That would be the other one. Other option, or option three, is people are over translating and making this something that it's not. So you can kind of pick whichever you want. I don't think your faith should rest or rely on that, but I just want to bring it to your attention. Like, this is something people have brought up. There's whole videos on it. And then my caution and warning, if you do look at this and you go, wow, that makes sense to me, I think that is a hidden message. I caution you because I've seen, oops, sorry. I have seen videos where they don't just go through the first 10 people and find the hidden message. They go from Adam all the way to Jesus and find a hidden message through all of the names all the way to Jesus. And I think that one is a bit of a stretch. I'm not an expert, but I do know names are the hardest things to translate. So I'd be questioning somebody's assessment of that stretch. Okay, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about. I just want to highlight kind of the fun facts I've learned over the years about certain people, like the Book of Enoch, the meanings of these. I really like this graphic. I think it's helpful to kind of visualize, if you're going with the literal year lifespan interpretation, what that would look like for these people who lived so long. Like, that is crazy to think about. That like Methuselah could have just talked to Adam about what the garden was like. Like, that's so cool. Lamech could have done that as well. So, very, very cool stuff. And we'll be coming out with our next episode, which is on this guy down here, Noah. And we get more about him. And then remember, as you read that one, you're thinking, all right, is Noah the one who's going to crush evil? And it starts to look like that right up until the end. Spoilers. All right, that has been From Adam to Noah. I hope you guys learned something new. Maybe I put some question marks in your head. Go and study that further. That's what I'm hoping you do. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.